at all. Beautiful. And the chat box function, which we'll be using today with some of the activities. So on your screen, you should see a little box down the bottom that says chat. So when, you know, Andrew and I ask some questions, you can just chuck your little responses in there and everything, and we'll be able to see it. And also, if you have any questions or comments, put them in that chat box as well. And Andrew and I will do our best to answer them at the end of the webinar as well. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today with this presentation. Looking so forward to having some discussion around this topic. And yeah, it's going to be really lovely. So my name is Bree. I'm the Health Promotion Coordinator for Arthritis Queensland. And today with me is the lovely Andrew, which you all would have seen him in the last week's webinar. So Andrew is the Health Promotion Manager for Arthritis New South Wales. And so this is our second nutrition webinar, and this is on arthritis and nutrition, eating well on a budget. So I'd just like to firstly mention that this webinar is about healthy eating a variety of healthy foods and ways to eat well on a budget. So I know the topic of healthy eating can be so different for everyone, and everyone has their own views and opinions on what they can and can't eat and what works with them nutrition-wise. But this is just a broad topic, and I'm speaking of general nutrition and not specific diets or anything like that at all. There are some really great tips in this webinar that you can utilise with whatever your dietary requirements are. So as mentioned, today's webinar is on healthy eating on a budget. So healthy eating usually means consuming plenty of vegetables, fruits, healthy fats and lean proteins. But however, some people may find eating healthy when money is tight can be really challenging, especially when you're living with a costly condition like arthritis. So this is just a little disclaimer. This presentation is based on general information and advice, and every effort was made to ensure the information is accurate and reliable. So it's not a substitute for the individual treatment advice from your doctor, your health professional or your specialist. So always consult with your doctor or your specialist, or even have a chat to a dietitian to obtain specific nutrition advice, as well as medical and treatment advice too. So in the spirit of reconciliation, Arthritis Queensland and Arthritis New South Wales acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So there's 6 different topics that we'll be discussing today that we'll be focusing on, and there's a few extra slides with some activities and resources that we'll get into as well. So we've got topic number 1, plan your recipes. So planning ahead allows you to budget, so you can adapt your recipes to fit your needs. So for an example, if you're following a specific diet like gluten-free or dairy-free, for your arthritis, you can adapt your recipes to suit. So using recipes with similar ingredients, it doesn't mean it has to be the same meal every day with the same ingredients. Change the recipes up and incorporate different herbs, you know, cook with brown rice one night and cook a stir fry another night. So for example, you may have a roast chicken and veggies one night for dinner. Then later in the week, you can use the rest of the cooked roast chicken and utilise it with veggies in a stir fry. It's about using that same meat and veg, but changing up the dish completely during the week. So find ways to stretch your recipes. So cooking with grains like rice, you know, beans, lentils, quinoa, or whole grain pasta even will allow you to stretch your recipe and get extra meals during the week. You can also add extra veggies in when cooking a stew or a soup or a curry, and this will allow you to get extra meals for the rest of the week. Using recipes that freeze well, so soups, casseroles, stews and curries, they're really budget friendly and they freeze really, really well. So you can really bulk up these meats with the cheaper ingredients like vegetables, or adding in lentils and tinned beans. And these meals often produce extra meals. So you can freeze the extra or have it for lunch during the week, or if you are spending less time in the kitchen if cooking isn't really your thing either. And buy your fruits and vegetables that are in season. So whilst this may not be a huge difference in savings, but it may mean that you can save up to $10 by choosing fruits and vegetables that are in season. So if your recipe states that you need to use cauliflower, and it may be a really big part of your dish, but cauliflowers, you have a look and they're like $9 a kilo, you can actually swap that cauliflower out and use broccoli instead. And broccoli may only be $3 a kilo. So spend some time looking at what's cheaper by the kilogram, and you can even do online shopping to check out the prices before going into store as well. So, activity time. So for this activity, we'll use the chat box, and I would like for you to all put in your favorite recipes. So your favorite recipe book, or your favorite website that you get your recipe inspiration from, or an organization that you use because you know they've got a recipe tab on their website, or even your favorite chef, and chuck that in the little chat box, and then I can put up mine, what ones that I use to get my recipes from. Andrew, do you have any of the above that you use for your recipes?
Yes, I don't know if it's always as nutritionally valuable as the kind of messages we're putting out, but your old, what's Jamie's 15-minute recipes? Sometimes they're very good from a time perspective. They're usually pretty cheap, usually reproducible. And for the most part, they're usually fairly well nutritionally balanced. So yeah, that would be my go-to for, especially when you're time tight, is just a 15-minute recipe that's usually pretty well measured when it comes to nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely. I see a couple in there. The Heart Foundation. Yes, Kelly, I use the Heart Foundation too. So some of my, but yeah, Jamie's 15-minute meals are unreal. I love jumping on there and finding his, and they're always so delicious too. So the ones that I use, I go jump on Dietitians Australia website. Then there's Nutrition Australia. They have recipes as well, and the Heart Foundation. So these three organisations, you all know that they're gonna have a lot of science backing their meals, a lot of research, and they're going to be heart friendly. So, you know, it's going to help reduce your risk of developing chronic diseases, I guess. But there's these three organisations have some really, really great recipes. And also there's another organisation called Oz Harvest. They have healthy, low budget meals that you can use on there, which is really great. Oh yes, the Woolies and Coal magazine, they've got some really good recipes as well, and SBS, yes. Great ones in here. And everyone, you can use each other's, I guess, recipe inspiration to jump online and go, oh, I'm going to jump on and try that as well. There's some really, really good ones in there. All right, so topic number 2, so go shopping with a list. So lists can make that dreaded grocery shopping trip easier, faster, and it helps reduce the impulse buying. So if you have a list, you tend to stick to it and you don't roam around the grocery store trying to remember what to buy. I am shocking. I'll go through every aisle trying to remember what I need to buy and still forget something. So writing a list of ingredients will help, or your recipes will help avoid the extra trips back to the supermarket. So as I said before, I don't know about you, but when I go to the shops, if I've forgotten something for a recipe, I tend to buy extra stuff that I don't need. So making a list and sticking to it means you won't need to go back for those forgotten items and avoid buying other stuff that you don't need. So it's a really great way to stick to your budget. And I know in the last webinar, a participant mentioned about online grocery shopping, click and collect as well. So it's such a great way to get your groceries delivered, or jumping online to do click and collect. It helps you stick to your list. You won't be swayed with those impulse buying as well. And you've probably heard this point before, but don't shop on an empty stomach. So this one's a big one, especially for me. So whenever I'm hungry, I'll go in and buy what I see. And it's usually those delicious, unhealthy snacks like chips, lollies, or other processed food. So when you're not intentionally wanting to buy these items and they end up in your trolley because you've gone grocery shopping hungry, it can end up making your grocery bill skyrocket. So you know those unhealthy foods don't tend to be budget friendly. So research does show that people who go grocery shopping when they're hungry tend to make the poor decisions and that are not based on the nutritional content of the food, but on cravings that will leave you asking for more later. Because we all know if you have that one bit of chocolate, you're always going to go back for that second bit of chocolate. And the last point, so this may not be relevant for everyone, especially if you're just buying food for yourself or another person, but purchasing the tin foods like your nuts, your beans and your grains in bulk can help you save money and keep your pantry well stocked for future meal planning. So it doesn't have to be multiple at once. It might just be 1 or 2 extra when they're on sale. If they're on sale, I always grab a couple extra just to have in there. So in the chat box, how many people here go shopping with a list or do click and collect or get your groceries delivered? And do you find that you tend to stick to your list if you take a shopping list or you do the click and collect stuff? What about you, Andrew? Do you use a list?
Pick on me all presentation, aren't you? No, I was realizing that I will get a lot out of today because one of my challenges is actually implementing a sort of planned approach to meal eating for the week. So I might sometimes do okay for the first couple of days and then I sort of slip towards the end. So I'm taking feverish notes as we talk today because I'm trying to implement some better habits around planning, especially because it helps my waistline, but it also helps my wallet. So that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to go shopping with a list. Otherwise, I'll just buy whatever and spend way more time than I need to in the grocery store. I do really like doing click and collect with like Woolies or Coles because it's just like obviously convenience. But I love going to Aldi because of the bargains, especially the middle aisle with all the sale items. I love that. Feels like I'm at a garage sale. Yeah, so I can see lots of people, yes, do a list, but don't always stick to it. Yes, I find sometimes I'm like, oh, I'll get that as well. Yes, yes, so there is quite a few of you that do a shopping list, which is really good. And the click and collect as well. Beautiful. All right. So topic number 3, so choose frozen or canned. So fruits and vegetables can be brought as frozen or canned, and they're still considered a healthy alternative to fresh produce. So many people believe that when they buy canned or frozen fruits and veggies, that they've lost some of their nutritional quality. So for snap frozen foods, this isn't true. Foods that are snap frozen are really, really nutritious and haven't lost many nutrients at all. So sometimes when we buy fresh produce, it may have sat on the shelf for a while and a long time being transported to the supermarket. So this actually results in really high amounts of food miles, and it may have lost some of its nutritional content during that transportation phase. So the canning process can often preserve most of the food's nutrients as well. So the macronutrients, so your carbohydrates, fats or protein content of the food are usually unaffected by the canning process. Although in some cases, there may be some loss of nutritional value in canned foods, but however, the canned foods can be more nutritious than fresh foods that have traveled really long distances. So the key message there is just don't be afraid to buy the frozen or canned foods. So frozen and canned foods often cost less and they last longer than fresh. So this is due to the preservation techniques utilised with canning and freezing. There is a big reduction in supermarket and at-home food wastage. So various studies identified a reduction in household waste associated with frozen food use. And we all know that to be true, because if you've got frozen fruits and veg, they're going to sit in the freezer until you completely use them, where fresh fruit and veg sit in your crisper, they become old and you chuck them out. So buying frozen can be a really, really good way at reducing your household waste. So a good tip is when you buy your fresh, a good tip is that you can freeze your fresh produce and other staple items if they're getting old. So a lot of people freeze their bread and their, wraps, for example. I always freeze them if I don't use them in time. So you just chuck them in the freezer, pull them out when you need them. And some people even freeze their dairy products and even their fresh produce. So if you find that you've got some old tomatoes in your crisper that are getting, on their way out, you can cook them up as a sauce. So chuck in some herbs, some onion, all of that. And then you can freeze that sauce and you can pull that out when you want to cook some pasta or something, or some soup or stew. So it's a really good way of using that old produce in your crisper, cook it up, and then chuck it in your freezer, and you can use it later down the track, and you don't have to buy that item at the grocery store for the next time. So when choosing canned fruits, it's best to choose those that come in water or light juice and not in syrup. So fruits canned in syrup are high in sugar and they have no nutritional benefits at all. So some canned produce may have salt or sugar added to improve its taste, texture, or appearance. So those who follow a low salt diet and need or manage their sugar intake should check the labels and look for products without added ingredients. Once that can is open, you can drain and rinse the contents, and it can help lower the sugar and salt content as well. So topic number 4, buy those generic brands. So generic brands are like your store-bought brands. So your Coles, your Woolies, your Black and Gold, home brand. I don't even know if they even still do home brand, do they?
I think so.
I think so. I don't know if I see Black and Gold that much, but choosing those brands can really save you up to 20 to 30% on your grocery list. So items like canned and frozen fruit and veg, your dairy food, your olive oil, your staple items like your salt, sugar, flour, all of that, even your cleaning products can tend to be so much cheaper in store brand versions, so your generic brand versions. And did you know that certain generic brand and then your brand name, so your more expensive items, often contain the same ingredients and sometimes are even made in the same factory? And the reason why I say this, for example, is my partner's dad, he works in a dairy farm down in Victoria, and he was telling me when they make cream cheese, it's made all in bulk together, and then that cream cheese is then put into generic brands containers, and then it's put into the brand name containers, and then that brand name products are put on the shelf, and they're about $2 to $3 more than the same product that was in the generic brand containers. So I'm not saying this happens to everything, but this is just an example that can happen. And the reason you can see the difference in this is you can check out the ingredient list between generic and brand name foods to see if it's the same ingredients. And there will always be, not always, I'm not saying always, that there will be a bit of a markup in price for the brand name. And also a good tip here with the use by dates and best before dates. So according to Australia and New Zealand food standards, we all know food should not be eaten past the use by date. However, most foods will have a best before date. So you can actually still eat foods for a while after the best before date, as they should be safe, but they may have lost some of their nutritional quality. But foods can be legally sold past their best before date and still be fit for human consumption. So good to remember if you have foods past the best before date, as it helps reduce food wastage. So we're going to have a look at this little example of the price difference of brands. So this is a simple spaghetti bolognese recipe. I use Coles online shopping website to find the prices of products with brand names and generic brands. So looking at this, you'll notice there's no difference in price within fresh produce, but there will obviously be a price difference if you decide to buy organic produce compared to non-organic. But when you're comparing shelf items, the prices are generally higher with brand names compared to generic brands. So for example, the minced garlic here, the generic brand is almost 100 grams bigger than the brand name, but it is literally half the price. So you're getting more product for half the price for the generic brand compared to the brand name. So cheese is always a really big one for me. I love Baker cheese. That brand is delicious. It's my favorite, but it always costs, $3 to $4 more than the generic brand. And this is seen with the Parmesan cheese. So the Parmesan cheese here is 3 times more expensive in the brand name compared to generic brand, and for the same size. So that's quite a big difference. So without adding it up, how much do you think you'd roughly save by choosing the generic brands with this shopping list compared to the brand name without adding it up? And mind you, this is for 4 servings as well.
Are we playing a game of prices right here, Brie? Is there a figure, or are we just going with like vague senses of a lot, a little?
You chuck in a couple of numbers if you like.
We've also got no car in case anyone's getting invested in getting...
I'll wait for a couple of answers. $6 there, 35% more. Wait for a couple more. What do you reckon, Andrew? $10, $8? Yeah, big difference, definitely, Carol.
It's guessing, I think some of the numbers put out there, if we're talking about per meal, is it?
For 4 servings, so.
I'm feeling like Theresa might be in the ballpark, $10 or more.
Yeah, so for the generic price, it will cost you $18 to buy everything for this spaghetti bolognese for 4 people. For the brand name, it is $27. So $9. Can you believe that? $9 for the same. It's just like crazy. So that's just for that one dinner alone. You will save $9 by buying the generic brands. Imagine if you brought generic brands for your breakfast, for your lunch, and for the week. How much do you think you would save a week by going generic brands? And as I've mentioned before, sometimes they're the same ingredients as the brand names anyway. So topic number 5, try growing a garden. So I know this may not be suitable for all, but growing your own fruits and vegetables, whether it's in pots, containers, in the garden, like little garden beds, it can be a bit of a money saver each week. So you don't need a big fancy garden bed. As long as you've got containers or pots, you can grow some of your favorite veggies in. And if you want to build a little raised garden bed, go for it, but just don't hurt yourself. So having a constant supply of your favorite fresh produce at home can save you money at the store and includes daily exercise when you're tending to them. So according to the garden experts, the best plants for small home gardens are those that are really crop heavy, but are very compact, so they won't take up much space. So we've got tomatoes. They are the most cost effective as they yield high yield crop for minimal input and the costs are low. And we've got eggplants, capsicums, and silver beet. So silver beet is pickable for 12 months of the year, and soft lettuces as they grow fast, and you can actually harvest them in less than 6 weeks' time. Remember when lettuces were like $10 to buy at the store? These can grow in your garden for in 6 weeks, which is great. So for herbs, the best for all year growth is thyme and sage. So supermarket fresh or dry herbs can get costly. So growing your own in small pots and containers can save you some cash as well. And you can just pick them off as you need, and you don't need a really big bunch that ends up dying in your fridge anyway. So experts say be mindful of planting onions, cabbages, or parsnips in small yards, as they take up a lot of space for really long periods of time. If you've got a big, beautiful garden and you want to plant onions and cabbages and parsnips, go for it. But for people with really, really small yards, it's not something that you can really grow heaps well in pots and stuff like that. So topic number 6 includes some meat-free meals during the week. So plant-based proteins tend to be nutritious and generally more affordable than meat. So research shows that people tend to save up to 10% on their grocery bill by going meatless for 1 week. Studies show that individuals who consume more plant-based meals tend to be within a healthy weight range, have reductions in their blood pressure and cholesterol levels when compared to those who ate high amounts of meats regularly. So when we're examining blood pressure and plant-based meals, one study identified a diet rich in plant foods and low in meat consumption significantly reduced the systolic blood pressure. So a high systolic blood pressure is related to increased risk of stroke and heart disease as well. So the key message here is just to focus on eating a healthy diet by incorporating 1 or 2 meals a week that are meat-free. And a good tip is, if you're still craving meat in one of your meatless meals, incorporate a really small amount as a base flavor while using beans or tofu in it as well to save on cost, increase the volume of your meals, and boost nutrition and hardiness. So in the chat box, what are some really great meat-free alternatives that you've used before in some of your meals? Andrew, do you cook with meat-free alternatives much, or?
Yeah, every now and then, for the reasons you've outlined, just even knowing that in today's world, we are overly reliant on processed foods and red meat. And so I will try to mix it up every now and then. I think tofu is my go-to. And I think lots of really great sort of South Asian recipes with like fried tofu that's giving me my protein hit as well, which I'm really pleased about. So probably tofu is a fairly readily available source of non-meat-based protein source for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Tofu is something I love cooking with. I'm not vegetarian or anything like that, but I do incorporate 1 or 2 meatless meals a week. And tofu is just, especially if you use it in a stir fry, it really soaks up the flavor of the sauce that you put in it, and it's delicious. And it has a very similar some of them do have a similar texture to the meat as well.
And I was saying as well, just around arthritis, is, we know that heavy reliance on red meats has some level of interaction with people having more experiences of gout in terms of yeast. That's worth raising that just around some further arthritis considerations. Is if you know someone or live with experiences of gout, not very pleasant, and so reducing your red meat intake can be really helpful in that sense too.
Yes, definitely. And there's some great examples in the chat box that everyone uses as well. Tofu, lentils, the mushrooms in a stroganoff. That's really nice. I love mushrooms, so that would be one of my favorite meals. Yes, frittatas, quiches. Yeah, they're all really, really good. So next one we're going to do is a bit of another activity. We're going to do some food swaps. So the examples that are put in here, that's no right or wrong. They're just my first reaction to answer something. So chuck your answers in the chat box. There's no right or wrong answer. And it's just more looking at what swapping some of the more expensive items for. So this first one, you've got a steak stir fry recipe, and you're looking to do a meat-free meal using this recipe. What is a plant-based option that you would swap the steak with that is healthy or more affordable? And there's lots of different plant-based options that you could use. But what's one thing you'd go, I'll swap the steak out? What would you do, Andrew?
Well, that is my tofu stir fry right there. That is exactly the kind of example of the thing that I would do with the tofu. Is it's great, stir fry it up, and as you say, because it absorbs the flavor, and does, as you also said, it kind of gives you that textural pleasure that meat doesn't.
Yeah, definitely. We've got eggplant in there.
Yes.
That's a really great option. Eggplant's got that. I love eggplant. Eggplant curry is my favorite. Yes, mushrooms, definitely mushrooms. Yep, I can definitely see mushrooms in there. And like you, Andrew, I put tofu. So tofu is really rich in protein, helps us build muscle, aids in muscle recovery, and we all know that our red meat is really high in protein too. It, helps us build strength and everything as well. So swapping for a meatless meal, swapping your steak for tofu, you're going to get not as high amount of protein as you would with steak, but it's still a really, really good amount. And as I said before, it soaks up the flavor of that stir fry sauce too. So it's really delicious. So the next one, if your recipe uses chicken breast in it, we all know chicken breast can be really expensive per kilo. So what is some different options? What are some different options of or cuts of chicken that you could use in your recipe that could be more affordable and you could actually have a bit of a bigger quantity? Yes, chicken thighs. Sandra, that's good. Chicken thighs, and they're delicious as well. They are cheaper by the kilo. Yeah, the legs. Yeah. Thigh fillets, wings. Yeah. They are definitely cheaper by the kilo. So for this one, I put a whole roast chicken, but obviously you're not going to chuck the whole roast chicken in the recipe. And the reason why I say getting a whole chicken, it's cheaper by the kilo, and you can actually get an extra meal out of the other half. So when I do my grocery shopping, I purchase a whole chicken in my grocery list one night, and this is only really this is not going to be applicable for people with cooking for families and everything like that, because you'll probably eat the whole chicken in one sitting. But I'll cook a roast chicken one night for dinner, and we'll have half, my partner and I will have half that roast chicken that night, and then another night for dinner we'll use the other half of that roast chicken. So I'll make a curry with it, or I'll chuck it through a stir fry or in a stew, or we'll have chicken and salad for lunches for the rest of the week. So that's a really great option. And we know if you buy a whole roast chicken, I don't know how much they are. I think at Aldi it might be like $3.50, $4 a kilo. So when you split that over and you're getting 4 dishes out of that one chicken, that is so cheap. And if you're just cooking for yourself, that whole chicken could be in multiple meals for you for the rest of the week. So it is a really great option. And what I also do is, if I've got time, I'll use that cooked chicken carcass. I'll put it in a slow cooker with some water, some veg and some herbs, and I'll cook that overnight and use that as a bone broth or a chicken stock, and I just freeze it in little containers and pull it out when I need it. So it is it's a really cheap option, and you can get so much goodness out of it. So the next one we've got fresh fruit and vegetables. So there's 3 different ways that you can save money from this webinar that we've talked about instead of buying fresh produce. There is one of them is a tricky one. We haven't mentioned it yet. So I'm looking forward to see if anyone can pick that. So what are 3 different ways you could save cost instead of buying fresh fruit and vegetables?
Oh, you've already mentioned that we can grow them ourselves.
That's one. Yes, that's true. Yep, grow. What are some cheaper alternatives instead of buying fresh? Yes, you can buy them from your local markets. That's a good one. Yes, Sylvia, frozen. We know frozen. Canned, frozen, perfect. Can anyone pick the last one? I haven't mentioned it in this webinar, so community garden, yes. Fan grow yourself.
Could we steal them?
So This one is odd-shaped fruit and vegetables. So buying the fruit and vegetables that aren't classified as pretty. I know Coles and Woolies do odd-shaped vegetables, and they're at such a lower cost than buying them if they're in perfect shape. So Woolies call them Odd Bunch, and Coles call them I'm Perfect. So you can buy this imperfect produce for up to half the price. So I buy lots of vegetables for my dog and cook them up, and I always buy the Odd Bunch from Woolies because it's so much cheaper and I have to buy so much for him. And also buying your produce when it's in season can actually save you some money as well. All right, so this is just the final tip on how some supermarkets can make you buy more. So they design their stores to facilitate specific foot traffic patterns, and then they put certain foods in your path, so you're more likely to buy it. They set up displays that pair products together. So this example shows fruit and Nutella. Some other examples include putting pasta and pasta sauce together, or pasta and cheese, all of that. And obviously they do that with unhealthy items such as chips and like fizzy drinks. They always pair them together. They'll actually give out free samples in the hope that you purchase more and go shopping with that hungry tummy, as the free samples can activate your appetite. Supermarkets also spur impulse buys from everything from lollies, chocolate, even to hand sanitizer and gift cards, and they display them at the checkout where customers must stand in line and wait. So that checkout boosts sales so much that manufacturers pay really, really big money to get retailers to place their products there. They place food with pictures or cartoons on it at children's eye level to provoke requests for those foods. And this can be seen in cereals, ice cream, lollies, all of those food items. And the supermarket bakeries, they do this and they make the store smell so good because they know the scent of baking bread or cupcakes can get people to actually buy more when they're grocery shopping. You know, you're walking around and you're like, oh, that fresh bread smells so good. Oh, look, there's fresh donuts. You tend to buy them. So not all supermarkets will do these things, but some of those really big chains incorporate a few of these techniques to increase purchases. So it's good to remember to not go shopping on an empty stomach, as these supermarket tactics may influence you to purchase more. All right, so we've got one final activity. Here we have a steak, vegetable and mashed potato recipe, so meat and 3 veg. And I want you to all work together on how would you revamp this recipe to make it a healthy and affordable and budget-friendly recipe. So using the knowledge from the webinar, what are some ways that you can make it healthy and budget-friendly? And I'm not saying meat and 3 veg isn't healthy. Of course it is. You've got your meat, you've got your vegetables in there. That's fantastic. But what are some ways that we can make it even healthier and more budget-friendly? What would you do, Andrew, to start us off?
Well, I wouldn't. I'm thinking there's a lot of substitution that we're going to get into, substituting certain foods for others. And I thought, yeah, to your first comment, I'd say, yeah, you could. We're certainly not suggesting you couldn't reduce the portion size as a first step towards addressing kind of a health aspect to the meat and 3 veg. But then, you know, we're also quite keen on thinking about how we can make this a lot more cost effective. So hence the substitution suggestions that are coming through now.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's my favorite.
Yes. Turning it to a stir fry, absolutely. Adding rice and vegetables that are in season, that's fantastic. Yep, buying frozen veggies, cooking it through with some canned veggies as well, some salmon. There's some really great ones. So definitely, and keep them coming through. My first instinct would be also to make it into a type of like stew or curry. So turning that meat putting it in there, adding in lots of beans, veggies, all of that, and getting it into a larger portion, so then we can freeze the extra meals, so you're not having to cook for the rest of the week. Or even we could be swapping out that meat and replacing it with some tofu as well. Buying your fresh fruit and veg that are in season. So these are some of the ones that I come up with. As I said, there's no right or wrong answer. What everyone's put in the chat box is spot on. They're great responses. But yeah, we can turn it into a dish that can be stretched, adding more vegetables and choosing those ones that are canned or frozen, or even the odd shaped ones, misshaped vegetables. Increase the quantity of the dish by adding in, your cheaper foods like your beans, your lentils, and adding in quinoa, even a quinoa brown rice mix. That's a really good option as well. Choosing those store-bought brands. We all know how much cheaper it was when we brought the groceries in generic versions. And then, yeah, you can change that protein to plant-based alternatives, or you even use a cheaper cut of meat as well. Yeah, using veg from your garden. So we've got some really great answers coming in there as well. And yeah, meal four bean mix is really great option as well.
I think it's also struck me that it's linking in with last week's talk about kind of the Mediterranean food diet and really packing your foods into that space, knowing that it has such good sort of anti-inflammatory properties that's really relevant to people with arthritis around weight gain or high levels of inflammation based off having, say, rheumatoid arthritis. So the Mediterranean diet and all the compositions of that lend itself very much to this discussion as well.
Oh, absolutely. And adding all the beans and veggies in there, that is definitely fits within the Mediterranean diet. And as somebody put in the chat box, putting a can of salmon through it as well. That's really, really great option. Do that. And it's a cheaper way to buy, your salmon too. So for those who lack confidence with nutrition and cooking, these are some really great resources that I found that can really work with you on building your confidence with nutrition and cooking. So if you have like a community group, or even get a group together, some of these resources in here can come and teach you some cooking skills, which is really, really awesome. So the first one is Oz Harvest. They do have a Nest program, and it's a really fun way to learn about healthy eating habits and how to cook simple and low cost meals. So they can do it over a 6-week period as well if you want to have multiple sessions. So it's activities, it's practical cooking classes, and the importance of sharing a meal. So the Oz Harvest Nest program is Australia-wide. So for people in Queensland, they do it in Brizzy, Gold Coast, and Sunshine Coast and Toowoomba. For New South Wales, they do it in Sydney and Newcastle as well. So the next one, which is just a Queensland-based initiative, they have the My Health for Life. So this is a free 6-month program. So you actually work with a health coach and to achieve your health goals. So it's done in small groups, or you could do over the phone coaching, one-on-one coaching. So it's really there designed to help Queenslanders stay well, lessen their risk of developing conditions such as type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. So My Health for Life is really great, and you can chat to your doctor about that as well.
And just brief, I can jump in. New South Wales Health has a Get Healthy, which is a similar initiative for the New South Wales residents.
Amazing. I was going to ask you, does New South Wales have something similar? So what was that called again? Sorry.
Get Healthy.
Oh, awesome. So that's a good one.
Telehealth sort of service.
Yeah, for everyone in New South Wales. I'm sure you can talk to your doctor about it too to get that, I guess, that referral into that program. The next one is another Queensland-based initiative, and it's very similar to the Oz Harvest one. This one's the Queensland Country Women's Association. So they do a country kitchens program, and they use volunteer facilitators who go across Queensland and help do activities and learning nutrition basics and doing cooking as well. So they work with community groups. So if you've got any local community groups in your area, you can reach out to the country kitchens and they come and do some practical cooking classes and nutrition classes as well. So they're a really great organisation. And the next one is an Australia-wide one, and that is Jamie's Ministry of Food. So I'm not too sure. I think it's been around for a few years now, but they do the same thing where they go around to community groups and they do work in regional and rural areas where they go out there to schools and everything as well. And they do the cooking skills, hands-on classes, and you can learn about cooking affordable and healthy meals as well from scratch. Did you have any other ones from New South Wales, Andrew, that off the top of your head? Sorry.
No, and I was going to say the CWA being sort of a national institution, there will be New South Wales equivalents. Whether they have a recipe for good health, I would imagine if it's a great initiative in Queensland, it's been extended into other states. So nothing jumps to mind. You've got good coverage of the primary things there. I think it's really useful for people.
Yeah, that's good. And it's also really good just to jump online and have a look at what's happening in your area as well. Google's good for that too. So that is actually all today of the content. I can stop sharing so we can all see each other, and we can probably maybe stop recording too. And if anyone has any questions, we can have a chat.